In a world where everyone is desperately trying to be noticed, where noise and chaos often drown out the quiet power that lies beneath, there's a truth that many overlook. Real strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to demand attention. It simply exists, standing firm, unmovable, like a mountain amidst the fiercest storm. A mountain doesn't need to bend to the winds, nor does it need to seek recognition. It just stands there, solid, commanding respect because of its sheer presence. That's the essence of true power. It's quiet, unyielding, and unbroken. Imagine for a moment the storm raging around you, winds howling, chaos all around. Everyone is scrambling for attention. Everyone is fighting to be seen, heard, validated. But you are like that mountain. The storm may rattle the trees, shake the ground, but it cannot touch you. You stand strong, unwavering, unaffected by the noise. There's something profoundly powerful in that stillness, isn't there? Something that commands respect without ever lifting a finger, without ever opening your mouth. In this world of constant movement, of never-ending battles for validation, we forget that there's an inner strength we can tap into that doesn't rely on external approval or applause. This strength doesn't need others to recognize it because it knows its own worth. It is an indestructible force, forged from within, unaffected by the world's judgment. It doesn't crumble under pressure. Instead, it turns adversity into an opportunity for growth, a stepping stone on the path to even greater resilience. Now, let me ask you, what if you could live like that? What if you could tap into that quiet strength, that power that exists within you, and use it to navigate through life's most difficult challenges? What if you could stop worrying about what others think, stop seeking validation from outside sources, and start becoming the person who commands respect simply by being yourself? What we'll uncover together in this video is the journey to that kind of strength. A strength that doesn't shout. A strength that is built through perseverance, through facing hardship with grace, through understanding that the quietest voices can be the most powerful. This is the strength that can turn adversity into your greatest ally, making the world take notice of you without you ever having to say a word. Are you ready to step into that power? To embrace a form of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be felt? Let's begin this journey together. Time is gold. It sounds simple, doesn't it? We all know time is precious. But how many of us truly understand just how valuable it is? We live in a world where every second seems to slip through our fingers. And we let it. We get caught up in the hustle, checking emails, scrolling through social media, ticking off items on a never-ending to-do list, and by the end of the day, we wonder, what did we actually accomplish? The truth is, we waste so much of our time. We waste it on distractions, on obligations that add little value to our lives, and on things that don't bring us closer to our goals or purpose. The Stoics were well aware of this, and their teachings resonate more today than ever before. Time, to them, was sacred. It was the one resource that could never be replenished. And once it was gone forever. Seneca put it bluntly, It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Think about your typical day. Do you rush through it, distracted by notifications, obligations, and the constant pressure to do more? How much of your day is spent doing things that truly matter? When you look back at the hours you've spent, how many of them were dedicated to your goals, your dreams, your personal growth? If you're honest with yourself, you might find that a lot of your time is spent on things that don't really move you forward. You give your time to other people's demands, to things that don't bring you fulfillment, to things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't matter. So what do we do about it? The Stoics would tell you to take a hard look at how you spend your time and stop wasting it. They would say, every minute matters. Every decision you make about where to focus your attention is a choice between something temporary and something permanent. The way you use your time determines the life you lead. I'll be honest, this lesson hits hard for me personally. It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that there's always more time, that you can get to the important stuff later. But here's the truth. The later you're waiting for never comes. Tomorrow always becomes today, and before you know it, the things that truly matter slip away, buried under a mountain of insignificant tasks. This isn't about perfection. It's not about being productive every second of the day or always working towards some grand goal. It's about intentionality. It's about realizing that you don't have to fill every moment with noise. You don't need to rush through life. Instead, focus on what truly matters, your passions, your relationships, your personal growth. Prioritize the things that will leave you feeling fulfilled when you look back. And remember, time is not something you can control, but you can control how you use it. You can make today count. So, ask yourself this. If today were your last day, would you feel good about how you spent your time? Would you look back and feel that it was used wisely? If not, now is the time to change that. Don't wait. Stop wasting time. Make it count. Put yourself first. I know, this may sound selfish, right? We've all been taught that putting others before ourselves is the noble thing to do. We often convince ourselves that we have to fulfill everyone else's needs first, constantly running around trying to make others happy, while putting our own needs on the back burner, telling ourselves, I'll take care of me later. But here's the problem. Later never comes. We're always waiting for the perfect time to prioritize ourselves. But it's a trap. We end up exhausted, overwhelmed, and running on empty. The truth is, prioritizing your own well-being isn't an act of ego or selfishness. It's a survival mechanism. It's necessary for you to thrive in this chaotic world. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not giving yourself the time and energy you need to recharge, nothing you do will ever truly flourish. Whether it's your work, your relationships, or even your mental health, if you're running on empty, how can you give your best to any of these things? The Stoics understood this on a fundamental level. They taught that self-respect is the foundation of a strong life. And self-respect starts with self-care, not just the kind that looks good on paper, but the deep, real, lasting care that comes from truly knowing yourself and respecting your own needs. It's about understanding that your mind, body, and spirit are your responsibility, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. Self-care isn't just about taking a bubble bath or indulging in a fleeting moment of comfort. It's not about luxury or temporary fixes. It's about honoring yourself enough to know that your well-being is a priority. When you take time to focus on yourself, you are aligning with the truth that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. Let's face it, so often, we're afraid to say no. We fear that if we don't please others, they'll judge us, abandon us, or think poorly of us. But let me tell you something, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I need this time for myself. Every time you say no to someone else's demands and say yes to your own needs, you are honoring yourself. You are drawing a boundary that protects your energy, your peace, and your sanity. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. In my own life, I've found that the moments I truly thrive, the moments I feel strong, are when I give myself permission to put myself first. It's not always easy, especially when the world seems to demand so much of us. But when I take the time to care for my body, my mind, my spirit, when I say no to what drains me and yes to what nourishes me, that's when I feel truly alive. If we want to show up for others, we need to first show up for ourselves. If you're not well, nothing you do will truly thrive. Your body, mind, and spirit are your most valuable assets. They deserve the care, respect, and attention they need to remain strong. Prioritize yourself. You'll be amazed at what happens when you start treating yourself with the same level of respect that you give others. You'll find yourself more energized, more present, and ultimately, more able to give your best to those around you. Actions speak louder than words. We've all heard this phrase, and we all know it's true. But how often do we fall for the empty promises of others? Words are cheap. They're easy to say. I'll be there for you. I'll take care of it. Trust me, I've got this. How many times have we heard these promises, only to find that when the moment comes, the person is nowhere to be found? It's easy to speak words, but it's in the actions that follow that true character is revealed. Words can be manipulated, twisted, and hollow, but actions don't lie. Think about it. Have you ever trusted someone's words only to feel betrayed when their actions didn't match up? Maybe someone promised to support you, to help you through a tough time, but when you needed them most, they were absent. Now, contrast that with someone who says little but shows up. They don't make grand promises or spew out comforting words, but when the chips are down, they're there. They offer a hand, a gesture, or even just their time. It's not about what they say, it's about what they do. And in that moment, their actions speak volumes. The Stoics understood this fundamental truth. They knew that true character isn't revealed by what someone says but by what they do. Words are fleeting. Actions endure. Imagine you're in a crisis, and someone tells you they're going to be there for you. But when it matters most, They vanish. You don't need empty promises. You need someone who will act. Someone who will stand by you, not just in words, but in deeds. The Stoics taught that integrity, honor, and strength of character are all tested in the realm of actions, not speeches, and it's in those actions that we find out who we truly are. In my own life, I've learned this lesson the hard way. I've trusted words and been let down. I've given people the benefit of the doubt, hoping they would come through, only to be disappointed when their actions didn't match their words. But I've also seen the power of someone's actions, someone who didn't need to say much but proved their loyalty, their commitment, and their care through their actions. And those are the moments that stick with you. Those are the moments that truly define a person. The ones who show up, who take action without hesitation, are the ones who make the most lasting impact. So, don't fall for empty promises. Don't let words blind you to the truth. In your own life, make sure your words and actions are aligned. Don't just talk about what you're going to do it. Be the person whose actions speak for themselves, whose integrity is shown through what they do, not what they say, and never settle for anything less from others. You deserve people whose actions align with their words. Trust in their actions, because at the end of the day, it's not what people say, it's what they do that truly matters. Learn to let go. This might sound easy, but anyone who has ever faced a situation where they needed to walk away knows just how difficult it can be. Whether it's a job that drains you, a relationship that's toxic, or a situation that holds you back, we often find ourselves clinging to what hurts us, convinced that if we just hold on a little longer, things will get better. But the truth is, some things, some people, and some situations are meant to be released. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught us the power of detachment, the power to walk away when something no longer serves us, when it threatens our peace and growth. The idea of letting go doesn't mean we're giving up, nor does it mean we're weak. It's actually an act of incredible strength. It's about knowing that we can't control everything around us. We can't control how others behave, or the outcome of every situation. But what we can control is ourselves. We can control when we decide that enough is enough, when we decide that it's time to let go and move on. Walking away from something that no longer brings value into your life is not a failure. It's an act of self-respect. It's recognizing that your peace, your growth, and your happiness are more important than clinging to something that no longer contributes to those things. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we have to keep pushing forward, that we have to keep holding on, especially when we've invested time, energy, and emotions into something. But sometimes, holding on only prolongs the pain. We convince ourselves that if we just wait a little longer, things will change, that if we just try harder, we'll make it work. But if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that change isn't always within our control. Some things are simply not meant to be. And when you can accept that, the freedom you gain is priceless. I've learned this lesson in my own life, and it's never easy. It's not about quitting or giving up. It's about recognizing when something no longer contributes to your well-being. I've held on to relationships, jobs, and even habits that drained me, believing that they would get better if I just tried harder. But once I learned to let go, to release what was no longer serving me, I discovered a sense of freedom and peace I hadn't known before. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but the weight that was lifted was worth every ounce of discomfort it took to walk away. The Stoics remind us that detachment is one of the most courageous things we can do. It's not about ignoring the past or pretending that it didn't matter, but rather about acknowledging that we've grown beyond it. And sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to let go of what's holding us back in order to make space for something better. So, if you find yourself stuck in a situation, in a job, in a relationship, or in a mindset that's no longer serving you, give yourself permission to let go. It might hurt at first, but the strength you gain from that decision will empower you to move forward with clarity, freedom, and peace. Don't rely on others for your happiness. It's a dangerous trap, one that many of us fall into without realizing it. The moment you place your happiness in someone else's hands, you give away your control. You become dependent, waiting for validation, affection, or attention to feel whole. It's easy to slip into this pattern, especially when we live in a world that constantly encourages us to seek approval from others. But the truth is, relying on others for your emotional fulfillment is like building your happiness on quicksand. The moment they fail you, and trust me, they will at some point, your entire sense of self-worth comes crashing down. The Stoics understood this fundamental truth. True happiness comes from within. It doesn't come from the validation of others or from seeking approval from the people around you. It's about creating a life where you are emotionally self-sufficient, where your happiness is not tied to someone else's actions or opinions. You see, the Stoics weren't saying that relationships, love, or companionship are unimportant. They're not. What they were teaching us is that happiness is not about the absence of others, but about the absence of neediness. When we constantly look to others to fill the gaps inside us, we lose ourselves in the process. We forget who we are without someone else's presence in our lives. If you live for someone else's approval, you're constantly shifting who you are to match their expectations. You mold yourself, bend yourself, and sometimes even break yourself in the hopes of being accepted, loved, or validated, and along the way, you forget who you were before. You lose your sense of self, your passion, your purpose, because everything becomes about them. And here's the catch. Even when you get their approval, it's never enough. You'll always be chasing the next bit of validation, the next moment of acknowledgement. It's an endless cycle of dependency that doesn't lead to fulfillment, only frustration. I've seen this play out in my own life. There was a time when I looked to others for my happiness. I believed that my worth was defined by their opinions of me, that I couldn't be truly happy unless I had their approval. I gave so much of myself away, adjusting and compromising, hoping for a sense of peace that never came. The moment I realized that my happiness wasn't something someone else could give me, It was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I stopped waiting for someone else to make me feel whole, and I started to create happiness on my own terms. True happiness comes from learning to enjoy your own company. It comes from cultivating passions that make you feel alive, from building a life that brings you peace. Whether or not anyone else is watching, your identity should not depend on someone else's presence or absence. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, your relationships shift. They become healthier, more genuine, because you no longer rely on them to define your happiness. You meet people, not from a place of need, but from a place of mutual growth, respect, and support. You become whole, not because of others, but because you've learned to be whole on your own. So stop waiting for others to make you happy. Find that happiness within yourself, and watch how everything else begins to fall into place. Stay true to yourself. In a world where everyone seems to have an opinion, a desire, or a judgment about how you should live, it's easy to be swayed by the tide. Whether it's in relationships, work, or friendships, we're constantly faced with the temptation to compromise our core values just to fit in or to please others. It seems harmless at first, a small concession here, a little change there, but before we know it, we're no longer the person we once were. We've become what others want us to be, leaving behind the authenticity that once defined us. But Stoicism teaches us that to live a good life, a life worth living, we must first be true to ourselves. Integrity isn't just a nice-to-have quality, it's the very foundation of personal strength. Integrity means that we are consistent with who we are, regardless of external pressures. It means living by our values, even when doing so isn't the easiest or most popular choice. And it's precisely this adherence to our core beliefs that brings us lasting fulfillment. The more we remain true to ourselves, the stronger we become. Because when you stand firm in your values, you are unshakable, no matter what the world throws at you. It's easy to forget this in the chaos of life, when you're faced with the pressure to please, to conform, to fit in. It can feel like a betrayal to stand your ground. The fear of rejection, judgment, or missing out can make you second-guess your own worth. But here's the truth. When you give up your authenticity, you lose the very essence of what makes you unique. And once you've lost that, you risk losing everything. No one respects a person who bends and shifts to meet the expectations of others. But when you stay true to your principles, you inspire respect from others and build trust in yourself. I've learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when I compromised my values, thinking it would help me fit in, succeed, or maintain certain relationships, but every time I did, I felt a little more distant from who I really was. The worst part was, no matter how much I changed to meet others' expectations, it never felt fulfilling. The approval I sought never lasted. It was only when I decided to stop pretending, to stop bending to everyone else's will, that I began to feel truly at peace with myself. That's when I started attracting relationships and opportunities that were genuine, based on mutual respect for who I really was. So, no matter how tempting it is to conform, Remember that the most powerful thing you can do is stay true to yourself. Be the person who stands firm in their beliefs, who doesn't back down when it's hard, who doesn't change just to please others. Because in the end, the only person you have to answer to is yourself, and the person who stays true to their values, no matter the challenges, is the person who will find real success and fulfillment. Don't lose yourself in the process of trying to please others. Hold on to what makes you unique, because that's what the world needs. More people who are unapologetically themselves. Learn the power of saying no. This might be one of the most difficult lessons to grasp, especially in a world that constantly demands your time, attention, and energy. We live in a society that pushes us to say yes to everything, to be everywhere, do everything, and be all things to all people. But here's the hard truth. You cannot be everything to everyone. Trying to do so will only drain you, leaving you feeling empty, stressed, and overwhelmed. And when you're constantly giving in to every request, you lose yourself in the process. That's why learning the power of saying no is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. Saying no is not rejection. It's not about shutting people down or being dismissive. It's an act of self-respect. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are precious. When you say yes to everything, you dilute your ability to focus on what truly matters. You stretch yourself thin and end up with nothing left to give. But when you learn to say no, you create space for yourself to breathe, to focus, and to grow. Saying no is not about being selfish. It's about being honest with yourself and with others about what you can realistically handle. Stoicism teaches us that the strength to say no is essential for maintaining our peace. The Stoics believed that we cannot control the demands that come our way, but we can control how we respond to them. We can choose to prioritize our own well-being by setting boundaries, and those boundaries protect our time and energy. A firm, respectful no is far healthier than a begrudging yes. When you say yes to something out of guilt or obligation, you're only hurting yourself in the long run. That kind of decision never leads to fulfillment. It leads to resentment and burnout. When you set boundaries, you create the space necessary for your true self to thrive. You allow yourself the freedom to pursue what aligns with your values, what feeds your passions, and what nurtures your growth. You don't have to say yes to every request or obligation that comes your way. It's okay to say no. It's okay to decline invitations that don't align with your goals or commitments. It's okay to protect your time, even if that means disappointing someone else. In fact, it's essential for your well-being. I've struggled with this concept in my own life. There was a time when I said yes to everything: work requests, social obligations, family commitments, all because I didn't want to let anyone down. I thought I had to be the person who could do it all, who could always be there for others. But it came at a cost. I became exhausted, frustrated, and eventually burned out. It wasn't until I learned to say no, to put my own needs first, that I started to feel more at peace. Saying no didn't make me a bad person. It made me someone who could show up fully when it mattered. someone who could give their best to the people and things that truly aligned with their values. The truth is, when you say no, you're not rejecting others. You're rejecting the things that take away from who you really are. You're choosing to honor yourself and your time, and in doing so, you free up space to live authentically and to focus on what truly matters. So, remember, saying no is not weakness, it's strength. It's not a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of your own self-worth. Learn the power of saying no and watch how it transforms your life. Embrace imperfection. It's something we hear often, but in a world that constantly idolizes perfection, it's hard to truly accept. We are bombarded with images of flawless faces, perfect bodies, and lives that seem to be in a constant state of perfection. The pressure to measure up, to fit into an ideal, can be overwhelming. But Stoicism offers a different perspective. It teaches us that true peace doesn't come from striving for perfection. It comes from accepting imperfection, both in ourselves and in others. Perfection, after all, is an illusion. It's a goal that can never be fully realized, and in the pursuit of it, we often lose sight of what truly matters. The Stoics understood that we are human, and as humans, we are inherently imperfect. We are constantly evolving, learning, growing, and with that comes mistakes, flaws, and setbacks. But instead of trying to hide or deny these imperfections, Stoicism encourages us to embrace them, to accept them as part of who we are and part of the journey we're on. Perfection doesn't bring peace, it brings anxiety. The constant chase for flawlessness makes us feel inadequate, because we're never quite there. But when we learn to accept our imperfections, we allow ourselves the freedom to grow more authentically, without the pressure to be something we're not. Think about the most beautiful things in life. Are they perfect? Most often, no. The best moments, the most meaningful connections, the most memorable experiences, they're often messy, unpredictable, and far from perfect. Think of a tree growing crooked, its branches twisted in all sorts of directions, yet it stands as one of the most awe-inspiring sights. Think of a piece of art, created by a hand that wasn't flawless, but full of emotion and raw energy. These things are beautiful because they are real, because they embrace imperfection. The Stoics viewed imperfection as a natural part of life's journey, a journey that isn't meant to be perfect, but meaningful. And when we learn to embrace imperfection, we move closer to true understanding and connection, both with ourselves and with others. For me, this has been one of the most liberating lessons I've learned. I spent much of my life trying to be perfect, striving for the perfect career, the perfect relationships, the perfect appearance. But the more I chased perfection, the more I felt like I was failing. It wasn't until I stopped chasing perfection and started embracing my imperfections that I truly began to find peace. I realized that my flaws are what make me unique, what make me human. They are what allow me to connect with others on a deeper level. When we accept our flaws, we stop hiding behind the facade of perfection, and we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are. Imperfection isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. It's in our imperfections that we find our strength, our resilience, and our authenticity. It's when we embrace our flaws that we begin to live freely, without the weight of unrealistic expectations. So, let go of the pressure to be perfect. Embrace your imperfections. They are not weaknesses. They are the very things that make you whole. And in accepting them, you'll find that true peace and happiness come not from perfection, but from embracing the beauty of being human. Stop chasing what's not meant for you. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, yet it's essential for finding peace in life. Too often, we hold on tightly to things or people that are slipping away from us. Whether it's a job, a relationship, or a dream that no longer serves us, we try to control what we can't, and in the process, we exhaust ourselves. The Stoics taught us that we cannot control everything. There are forces, people, and circumstances beyond our reach, and trying to cling to them only drains our energy. We must learn to let go of what is no longer meant for us. No matter how difficult it is, there is a strange comfort in the idea of control. It feels safe, familiar, but the more we try to control things that are slipping away, the more we lose sight of what we can truly control, ourselves. The Stoics understood this truth deeply. They believed that our focus should be on the things we can change, our own growth, our values, and how we respond to life's challenges, instead of exhausting ourselves chasing things that are no longer aligned with our path. We should direct that energy toward cultivating who we are becoming. In my own life, I've found that the more I've tried to hold on to things that were meant to leave, the more empty and frustrated I became. I spent countless hours chasing relationships that were no longer healthy, clinging to goals that didn't fulfill me, and trying to make things work that were simply never meant to be. And each time, the more I chased, the further away they slipped. It wasn't until I learned to let go, really let go, that I found peace. It wasn't easy. Letting go often feels like surrender, and surrender can be terrifying. But in that act of bravery, in that moment of releasing what wasn't serving me, I created space for something new. When you stop chasing things that no longer serve you, you make space for new opportunities and deeper, more authentic connections. The right people, the right experiences, the right opportunities, they will come, but only when you stop holding on to what's already gone. It's about trust, trusting that what is meant for you will come at the right time. Trusting that by letting go, you're making room for the things that truly align with your path. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from within, from the understanding that we can't control the external world, but we can control how we respond to it. Letting go is an act of bravery because it requires us to acknowledge that sometimes the best thing we can do is release what is no longer ours to hold. It's an act of trusting that life will unfold as it should, without our frantic need to control every detail. I've come to realize that some things are meant to pass, and forcing them to stay only holds us back. When you stop chasing what's not meant for you, you free yourself from the burden of false hope and open yourself to the possibility of something greater. Letting go is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's the strength to trust that what is meant for you will always find its way to you. And that sometimes, the most important thing you can do is create space for that to happen. The power of silent strength is a force unlike any other. In a world that constantly pushes us to be louder, bolder, and more visible, the Stoic path teaches us that true strength doesn't come from shouting our worth to the world. It comes from embodying that worth quietly, through our actions, our values, and our integrity. The Stoics believed that strength was not about forcing attention on ourselves, but about living in alignment with our principles. Regardless of external recognition, it's about doing the right thing because it's right, not because you're expecting applause or approval. And when you start living with this kind of silent strength, something extraordinary happens. The world begins to notice you, not because you're seeking validation, but because your actions speak louder than any words ever could. People start to respect you, not for what you say, but for who you were and how you carry yourself. Your integrity, your decisions, your ability to remain true to your values despite the pressures around you. These are the things that command respect. I've seen this play out in my own life. There was a time when I felt I needed to constantly prove myself, to shout my worth and my achievements to be seen, to be acknowledged, but it was exhausting. The constant chase for validation, the pressure to always be noticed, it drained me. It wasn't until I embraced the Stoic way, focusing less on the noise and more on my own integrity, that I truly began to find peace. I started making decisions based on what was right for me, based on my values, not on what would impress others. And over time, the people who mattered, the right people, recognized me for what I stood for, not for how loud I could be. This is the power of silent strength. It's not about being seen or heard. It's about being grounded in who you are and letting that quiet power guide you. You don't need to seek approval, and you don't need to scream your worth to be noticed. When you live in alignment with your principles and act with integrity, the right people will recognize your value, and they will respect you for it. But here's the key. It starts with you. It starts with choosing to embody these Stoic principles in your own life. It starts with embracing the power of silence, of strength that doesn't need to be loud or flashy, but simply steady, resolute, and unwavering. So, I challenge you today. Stop seeking validation from the world. Stop chasing applause. Instead, focus on living with integrity, making decisions that align with your values, and showing up as the person you know you truly are. Watch how your life transforms. Watch how the world begins to recognize your value, without you needing to say a single word. You already have everything you need within you. Let your actions, your quiet strength, speak for you. And remember, the most powerful thing you can do is stay true to yourself. Let your silent strength lead the way. The world will notice.